Welcome to the Word Colony universe. In this video, we'll take you through the complete game rules from start to finish. Let's dive right in and cover everything you need to know to start your Word Colony adventure. What's in the box? Each player will navigate with their own pawn on the scoreboard. The pawn will be moved each time the player collects new points, forward, or loses points, backward. In the base game, there are 4 pawns and 4 sets of ABCD answer cards for 4 players. The game can be expanded to a larger number of players using 1 or more expansions. Letter cards, or question cards, will be used by each player when it is their turn to read a question and then to build words on the table. Each letter card contains a letter and a score of 1 point, 2 points, or 3 points. A general knowledge question and 4 answer options, A, B, C, or D, with only 1 correct answer. Black cards work just like a letter card. The same rules apply. The only difference is that they have a negative score. Black cards can be used to create new words, especially if a specific letter is needed, but their negative scores will be subtracted from the word's total score. Might be useful. Black cards can also be used to read questions. In this case, no player will collect new cards that round. The game also contains 42 special cards that offer certain advantages or actions during the game. Special cards can be used anytime during a player's turn if they draw such a card. Each special card contains its guidelines for use. And last but not least, the box and the card holder. The box, along with the special designed card holder, is extremely useful for storing the game components. It was designed to hold cards upright, facilitating easy distribution during gameplay and allowing players to draw from a wide variety of topics. The box is less than 9 by 9 inches, accommodating up to 10 different expansions in addition to the base game cards already included. This eliminates the need to increase storage space or carry multiple boxes. At the start of a new game, players will choose the type of game they want to play. The difference among the 3 options lies in the score that players must collect to win. Game duration will vary based on the chosen game. Quick game, master game, or epic game. Each player will collect 2 new cards from the box when they reach or pass the checkpoints and continue the game. We recommend starting with a quick game. Each player will choose a pawn and a set of 4 ABCD answer cards from the 4 available sets for 4 players. Players will use these cards to give the answer they each think is correct in the question rounds, and the pawns will be used on the scoreboard when they collect or lose points. If fewer than 4 players are playing, any unused sets will be removed from the game. Before the first round begins, players will shuffle all letter cards, black cards, and special cards together on the table. They will then randomly insert them into the box holders and deal 5 cards to each player. If face-up cards are discovered during the game, they will be removed from the box and set aside in a separate trash pile. To determine who starts the game, each player will draw a new card from the box. The player with the letter closest to the letter A will start the first round. Once the starting player has been determined, these cards will be placed separately in the trash pile. These cards will not be used in the game. That wraps up our guide to setting up the Word Colony original base game. Now that you've prepared the board, sorted the cards, and positioned your pawns, you're all set for the thrilling gameplay ahead. At the beginning of each new round, before reading a question, the player will draw a new card from the box. The newly drawn card will be added to any others they have in their hand. Without revealing their hand to others, the player will choose one of the letter cards or black cards in their hand, including any newly drawn ones, to read aloud the question and the 4 possible ABCD answers without disclosing the correct answer. Avoid repeating questions from previous rounds. A player holding a card with a question that has already been used in a previous round to read its question may only use it to build words on the table. The other players will each use the 4 cards with ABCD answer options to choose the option they think is correct. After all players place their answer choice cards face down on the table, the player who read the question will reveal the correct option and everyone's answers will be compared. All players who answered correctly will collect 1, 2, or 3 new cards from the box, depending on the score of the card read. Players who answered incorrectly will not collect anything this round. If no one answers correctly, the player who read the question will collect the cards for the round. If the card read from is a black card, no player will collect new cards this round. Players who answer incorrectly will lose either 1, 2, or 3 points, depending on the value of the black card, and must move their pawns backward on the scoreboard. Players who answer correctly will not lose any points this round. Despite being a disadvantage to the holder, black cards can be strategically used to make others lose points if they answer its question incorrectly. After the question round ends and other players collect their cards, the player can use their special cards, if they possess any, and start building as many words and word colonies as they want, or can, as well as expand or conquer words, develop supercolonies, and initiate decolonizations. Let's dive in. Building a word. Single words will be built horizontally by partially overlapping the cards from left to right so that the letters are visible. For example, the player who built the word flow will now have a total score of 6 points and will move their pawn 6 steps forward on the scoreboard. 2 or more players can occupy the same position on the board. In this case, pawns will overlap in the same position. Only English words are valid. Players may use a mutually accepted dictionary if needed. Letter cards can be used to build new words, whether the card was previously used to read a question in a previous round or not. Once cards are used to build a word and placed on the table, they cannot be picked up or changed. Cards in hand that have not yet been used to build a word will not count toward the score. Expanding a word. Words can be expanded by adding additional letters to the end of the original word to build new words with new meanings. Expanding a word can be done by both the holder of the word and also other players on their turn, earning points for the newly added letters. For example, the player who adds the new letters ERS to expand the word flow collects 3 points and moves their pawn 3 steps forward on the scoreboard. The word flowers will still belong to the player who originally built the word flow, but they will not receive the additional 3 points for the newly added letters. Only the player who added the letters E, R, and S will receive the 3 points. Keep in mind that during their turn, players can even expand words and colonies held by other players, but only if they have already built at least one word of their own on the table and their pawn is on the scoreboard. Inserting letter cards at the beginning of the word is not allowed. Building words using black cards. The player can choose to use 1 or more black cards to build words. After building the word, they calculate the total score of all letters used. For example, the player who built the word wonder will now have a total score of 5 points and will move their pawn 5 steps forward on the scoreboard. The total score will be calculated taking into account the negative scores of the black cards as well, such as the letter R in this case, which has a value of -1 point. Conquering a word. On their turn, each player can build as many individual words as they wish. However, they must keep in mind that single words can be conquered and drawn into a foreign colony, risking the loss of points. A player may conquer a single word held by another player by expanding the word, or by building a new higher-scoring word over it. Let's see some examples. Conquering by expanding the word. If the player expands the existing single word by adding new letters with a higher total score. For example, the player who expands the word win, worth 4 points, originally created by another player by adding the letters E-maker, worth 9 points, will conquer the word win and gain the 4 points from the other player. The player who owns the new word winemaker, worth 13 points, will move their pawn forward 13 steps on the scoreboard, while the player who lost the word win, worth 4 points, will lose the 4 points and move their pawn backward 4 steps. Conquering by building a new word over it. If the player builds a higher scoring word over the original existing word, for example, the player who built the word napkin on top of the word win, worth 4 points, held by another player, by adding the letters apkin for a total value of 8 points, will conquer the entire word win by building their own 2-word colony and collect the 4 points from the player who originally owned the word win. They will move their pawn 12 steps forward on the scoreboard. The player who lost the word win will lose 4 points and move their pawn 4 steps backward on the scoreboard. Building a word colony. A word colony is formed when a word is built perpendicularly on top of another single word. The new word must begin with the last letter of the previous word. A word colony consists of at least 2 connected words. Following our example, A new word could be built horizontally, perpendicular to the word napkin, starting with the letter N at the end of the word. The player has chosen to build the word next, for which they will receive the corresponding score of the E, X, and T letters, worth 5 points, and will move the pawn 5 steps forward on the scoreboard. Next, if another player wants to build a new word in the same colony, the same rule applies. They can build perpendicular to the last word built in that colony using the last letter, in this case the letter T, to start a new word vertically. The new word try has been created vertically by adding the R and Y letters with a total value of 3 points. The player will move forward on the board 3 steps. Words that are already part of a colony cannot be conquered by another player. The colony is protected. But hey, remember, after building an individual word, the player may immediately develop it into a word colony in the same round. They may also build other single words if they choose and have the opportunity. In a word colony, new words will always be built on top of those already on the table. Any player may build as many words as they wish during their turn, in any colony they choose, both their own and those owned by other players. Within the same colony, unique words will be allowed only, without repeating an existing word. Developing supercolonies. When a player manages to develop a word colony to a minimum of 5 words, it becomes a supercolony, and the player receives 5 extra points for achieving this. On their turn, players will announce that they have developed a supercolony and then move their pawn 5 positions forward on the scoreboard. The game may continue, with additional words being added to and further developed within this supercolony. In our example, the colony built on the word win became a supercolony containing 5 words, 3 horizontally, win, next, and yank, and 2 vertically, napkin, and try. The player who develops a supercolony will receive an additional 5 points, regardless of whether it was built entirely by them or if other players contributed to its development. On their turn, players can develop multiple supercolonies and subsequently build additional new words in the same round if desired. Decolonization. If a supercolony reaches or exceeds 10 words, the player who owns it may decolonize, doubling the total score of the first word built in that supercolony. When a player decides to make a decolonization, they will keep unfolded on the table only the last word built in that supercolony, and the remaining words, whether 9 or more words, will be gathered and placed in a separate deck of cards. The deck of gathered cards will still be owned by the player, but they cannot be reused in this game. They will be placed next to the remaining word on the table as a reminder that a decolonization has been performed at that location. In our example, the score of the entire word win will double. From 4 points for the letters W, I, and N, it will now be worth 8 points. The player holding this supercolony will move the pawn 4 steps forward on the scoreboard. The word kept on the table can still be used by the player, with the possibility of developing it into a new word colony in the same round if they choose. This word cannot be conquered by another player. Decolonization is optional and can only be performed on the turn of the player who owns the supercolony of at least 10 words after they finish the question round. The round ends after the player has finished building words on the table or taking any other action related to word colonies. If they choose not to build or take any action, they will say pass. The player to their left starts a new round by drawing a new card from the box and reading a question of their choice. Who wins the game? The winner is the first player to gather the necessary points and get their pawn to the finish line in the chosen game. Quick game, master game, or epic game. Alternatively, the winner can be the player with the most points if there are no more cards available in the box or if all players agree to end the game. If there are no more cards available in the box, the game can continue by reshuffling and using cards from the trash pile, which are returned to the box. Keep in mind for the final score, if players reach the finish line with 1 or more black cards in hand, their negative score will reduce their total score on the scoreboard. They must move their pawn back on the scoreboard according to the total negative score from the black cards and continue the game. That wraps up our comprehensive word colony original gameplay guide. For those looking to elevate their gameplay for more accurate gaming experiences, Feel free to explore the words aloud and glossary sections on our official website. And don't forget to add to your collection all Word Colony expansions and gather all your loved ones for a game by adding new pawns and new cards with endless new content into the game, which allows you to forge epic alliances, develop new strategies, and much more. Join our colony at wordcolony.com for more tips and updates.